This is the Needless Things Creators Series, where we talk to creators about the things that they create. I'm your host, Dave West, and today we are talking to Bill Murphy and Sean Rourke from Fresh Monkey Fiction. All right, Bill and Sean, welcome to the show. I'm very happy to have you guys here. Fresh Monkey Fiction. We've been talking to you guys about you guys on Needless Things and on Audible Interlude, our GI Joe podcast. GI Joe and GI Joe adjacent, we like to say, for a very long time now. But I want to start with we're going to get into Operation Monster Force, but I kind of want to start really with Fresh Monkey Fiction and where that got started, because I've had an awareness of the company for years now. And I can't pin down. I feel like Eagle Force might have been the first thing where I really got sort of caught up and was like, ooh, what's going on over here? But where did the company start, and how'd you get started making toys?
Yeah, about 10 years ago, Kickstarter was kind of becoming a thing at that point, and I'd been wanting to do toys for a long time, but hadn't been able to figure out how to, navigate some hurdles. And then when Kickstarter became a thing, I was like, oh, I could try that. So our first line was a line called Amazing Heroes, which was a line of five-point articulated superheroes in a similar form factor to Mattel's Marvel Secret Wars line from the 80s. And we did a bunch of public domain superheroes from the 1940s, along with a couple of licensed characters like Captain Action and Madman. So that was like our first, about 10 years ago, we jumped into that, and it's just kind of been snowballing ever since. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So those are the Secret Wars styles, and now you've got long box heroes
Correct.
coming out as well. Actually, so some of those have already hit, haven't they?
Yeah, wave one. Let's see, those landed about, I don't know, maybe 8 months ago or so.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and those are done with my buddy Toy Otter on Instagram. So if you don't follow him, please do. We do. Those are kind of in the 80s superpowers sort of form factor.
Right.
With more indie comics heroes from the 90s and early 2000s.
And what's fun about those, well, first of all, the fact that people are making hack slash figures is awesome. And I would like to go ahead and say Cassie Hack and Vlad would go really well with Operation Monster Force. I'm just throwing it out there.
Tim Seeley also agrees, because he's bugging me all the time. Just so you know. So it's definitely something that we want to do, and Tim is all for it. So it's just, I don't think it's a question of when, not a question of if, I think, at this point.
That is awesome to hear. Yeah. So yeah, the long box heroes stuff. Well, I love that we're at a point now where these form factors that people are familiar with can be adapted in so many different ways. Because as a kid getting the Secret Wars figures, it was fun. It was like, cool, I knew these characters, but it was so limited. Yep. And really, Superpowers, as expansive as that line was, again, kind of limited. But now opening it up to things like the Goon and Hack Slash and Madman and like all these great independent comics that hit me, because in the 80s I was Batman, X-Men, Spider-Man. And then, just like everyone else, into the 80s, early 90s is when independent comics were, you discovered Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then you're like, oh, wait, there's so much other stuff like this. And seeing all that stuff start to come to life now in a way that it really hasn't before is great. But it is with these properties that are within the world of comic books, they're almost kind of a niche of a niche. How do you determine, like, okay, I think this one's worth doing?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think a lot of it comes from just again, passion, or the, if you're really into, that comic, I think it starts there, obviously. And then Jason, who I did the line with on Longbox, he sculpted probably, I have to say, probably 30 or 40 different characters he wanted to do. And then we just started going out to the creators to see if they were interested. I think at that, and then we sort of landed on the characters from our first wave, and it just kind of went from there. And we're going to hopefully launch wave 2 early next year.
I think that's the magic of Longbox's Toy Otter's stuff was there online,
Yeah.
just as the 3D designs that he was doing, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, and by the way, they're going to be figures of some of these now.
Yeah, yeah, and it definitely started there. I think we had been friends forever, over 20 years, and so he kind of was like, "Hey, I'm going to do these now because I've got Instagram now, and I'm liking what I'm doing, and it gives me some stuff, fun stuff to do in my free time. But do you think you could make any of these?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, let's go find out." So, and and yeah, we ended up with a great lineup for wave 1, and we've got some cool stuff coming for wave 2 as well.
So getting into the superhero stuff obviously has worked out pretty well so far. But it's interesting that one of the other sort of diversions you've taken is the Naughty or Nice collection.
Right.
And those Santa figures, those Santa figures are the reason that Operation Monster Force was my most anticipated line this year, because I had seen the quality. I knew what the I know Santa getting you excited about monsters is maybe not the traditional journey, but seeing the quality and execution of those figures and knowing, oh my gosh, this is what they do in a 1/12 scale. I mean, that really sold the whole idea to me of like, whatever they do in this military monster realm, I'm here for. But how in the world do you decide we're going to do Santa figures and love them?
Yeah. Arlen, who is the creator and designer of that line, again, had done a lot of sculpts for me with the Eagle Force stuff, and we've kind of known each other forever. And in a similar fashion to sort of what I mentioned with Jason, Arlen kind of was kicking around this idea of like a single Santa Claus figure, and he was like, "Hey, is that I did this thing. Do you think we can? What do you think of it?" I'm like, "I love it. Let's build a whole line around it and let's go." Right? That was sort of me. And he's like, "You think so?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." And then we just started like brainstorming. Hey, okay, we should do Cyborg Santa, and we should do a Sergeant Santa, we should do all this, and nobody was really playing in that realm in terms of doing Santa Claus action figure. There's certainly a lot of Christmas type stuff out there,
sure,
but there wasn't really anything on this side of it, and so hey, let's give it a shot. And then again, now we're doing reindeers. We're about to launch a sleigh for the line. So yeah, he does an amazing job. He and I kind of conceive the characters together and the thoughts together, and he just knocks out some amazing designs. And then really, we wouldn't have been doing this if the fans or the folks didn't want it. So that's been the great thing, is like everybody showed up and they did want to buy it, and that convinced Big Bad Toy Store to help us make it happen.
Well, and that partnership with Big Bad is so important. I've been buying stuff from them for 20 whatever years now, and they have a brand recognition that's so valuable, I think, to something that is launching. Like when Big Bad says, "Yes, we're going to carry this thing," that's cachet. Like that's a stamp of approval that's very important to collectors.
Yeah, I think for all of us who make indie toys, I think when Big Bad carries your line, it's sort of like legitimizes you in some way, right? It's like, oh my God, they recognize that this is important, and they've been great partners for us for many years for a bunch of lines, and are very much wanting to support the indie toy community as well. So that's great.
Yeah, and it is, that's a good point. It is a special thing that because they could just stick with the mass market retail and the direct market, like the stuff that they've traditionally carried that goes through Diamond or whatever the case may be. Like it would be very easy for them to just stick with that stuff and not worry about the smaller guys. But they have really taken their place in the independent toy community to heart, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And they've been embracing it. They'll work with folks who are trying to start up their own thing, and they'll talk to folks who are doing stuff on Kickstarter, and again, they really, there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of eyes on Big Bad. So it kind of helps, I think, a lot of us get more attention to the lines that we're making. And then that led to this collaboration on Monster Force. So that was really exciting.
Well, and then so we've laid a little bit of groundwork for anybody watching or listening about, kind of what Fresh Monkey Fiction has its fingers in right now. But Sean, I want to talk to you a little bit. What is your background with toys and monsters, and how'd you get to where we are right now?
Well, that's a good question. That's a very good question. And just to sort of let everyone know why I'm even sitting here. So Bill is Fresh Monkey Fiction. Like he is he is that company. And on occasion, I come in and I write for Bill and help to spitball some ideas. But Monster Force is a line that we developed together, and it came from not only Bill kind of seeing a sort of a vacancy in the market for a certain thing, and me really loving vampires, which may or may not be evident by the stuff I've got hanging on my wall behind me.
Well, since you mentioned vampires, real quick, we're here. Go ahead and plug the Vampire Podcast because I want people to know about it.
Oh my God, so generous of you, Dave. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much. Yes, so I have a YouTube channel called The Vampire's Castle, which is very easy to find on YouTube. And it is basically just me talking with other storytellers and creators about vampires. And it's interviews, it's resources for people who are working on their own vampire projects. We've got a ton of videos that's all about like vampire strengths and weaknesses and like the burden of living forever and like all this kind of stuff that like asks a bunch of questions that you as an author or creator might want to be thinking about for your own characters. So please, by all means, everybody stop on by the Vampire's Castle, and I'll keep my plug right there because
excellent.
that's not actually what we're here to talk about.
Well, but real quick, I will say this: if you have not covered it or wish to cover more or get into it, if you ever want to talk about Brian Lumley's vampire universe, give this guy a call. Yes,
Necroscope. Now, did you get into Necroscope because of the comics or because of the books?
No, the books. Long ago, back when going to used bookstores twice a week was part of my life. Gosh,
okay,
late 80s, early 90s, maybe.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Those covers, those lurid, like almost heavy metal album covers on those books.
Yeah, it's like a fanged skull with a big serpent tongue coming out of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Those caught my eye, and man, I love the way that guy, what he did with vampire mythology. I love it.
Yeah, and that first book in the Necroscope saga is very different from most other vampire stuff that I've read. And I loved his approach of like the vampires already tried to take over the world, but they completely screwed it up. And so now it's only through, the vanity and the greed of certain men that like their power is even like coming to the forefront again.
Well, it strikes me
really interesting.
I've never written. We're not going to turn this into Needless Things presents Vampire's Castle, but I'll just say real quick. In looking back at the way his books wrote, I think maybe he had a very much sort of a Larry Hama writing style where he wasn't sure where he was going, and this world he created kind of just happened as he kept writing books. But anyway, back to everybody, check out Vampire's Castle on YouTube. Like, subscribe, share, do the thing you know you're supposed to do. All right, back to toys.
So basically it was when we were talking, Bill was saying he was like, myself and one of my previous partners were trying to figure out a way to do a sort of like a G.I. Joe type of line with influence of kind of like the Universal monster movies. And I was like, what would make that really sing? And then like I just kind of like pitched him this idea of like Dracula being on the side of the good guys and working with a Van Helsing against basically the Forgotten King was part of that original like kind of 3-character pitch.
Now,
And then
did you
like
know at the time what the Forgotten King was, or was it more of some powerful entity thing?
I don't remember if I had the name yet or not, but the idea of sort of what the Forgotten King is was something that I had been chewing on.
Okay.
And I don't know, it just happened, I guess, was the right idea at the right time, because Bill was like, I love it. And then like before I knew it, we were off to the races. And then it was like, great, we need about 1,000 other characters, and what is this story? So so it kind of all came out of that.
Well, and I really love the concept of the Forgotten King, because my own personal kind of, because you know how you apply your own perspective and experiences to whatever story that you're coming to. What I'm sort of relating that to is the promise of the old Brendan Fraser Mummy franchise, is like, if that mythology were a little different and had successfully been folded into a Universal Monsters type world, that could be what we would have gotten.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And there are definitely, I mean, there are definitely echoes of that Brendan Fraser, the Arnold Vosloo portrayal of the Mummy, certainly, in the character of the Forgotten King. But there's also, honestly, one of the other inspirations for that was, the works of H.P. Lovecraft. And like, he has an elder being named Nyarlathotep, which is sort of like a cosmic deity masquerading as an ancient pharaoh type creature, but who also shoots 8mm art films and shows them in salons in the 1920s.
I love it.
But that's the thing that I really loved about sort of Lovecraft's work and the way that he creates these villains and sort of these creatures, is that there's always an unknowable quality about them. Like, they're bad, they're powerful, but what are they trying to do? And there's like, it's just beyond sort of the limits of our comprehension. And for another project that I was working on for a very long time, still working on, I was doing lots of research into ancient societies, and obviously Egypt is one of the biggest, most famous one of all of those. And it was interesting to find out about, there were some pharaohs in Egyptian history that, rose to power very unpopularly. Their reign was considered anti-Egyptian by the citizenry. And once they or their dynasty was out of power, the priest class all went around and just like destroyed all their monuments and scratched their names off of everything and just tried to eliminate them from history. And so I was like, ooh, what if he's one of these guys, but like instead of being the type who's like, I've decided we're going to worship a different god, he's like, no, he's like some dark sorcerer pharaoh who just like, almost brought the world to an end in his reign or something like that. And that mystery of like, well, wait, who is he? We don't know, because the ancient people he was ruling over got rid of any mention of him.
Isn't that terrifying too? Because in any sort of traditional narrative, like the movies and books and comics and whatever we all grew up with, when some force emerges from the past, there is always, it's research time. Like when you go to Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yep, absolutely.
Greatest TV show of all time.
That's
Every
a great
time
example.
the new villain popped up, let's go to the library and learn about this villain. But what if that history has been eliminated and you cannot learn about this villain? That's terrifying.
Yeah. How do you stop him?
Right.
What are his weaknesses?
Yeah.
If only someone had written that down 4,000 years ago.
So what does the collaborative process look like? Like when you guys get together with ideas, is it Sean, is it you coming in with a character, and Bill, you kind of give your input about like how that could work in a world? How does that collaborative process work?
I think there's a few different ways. A lot of times, because we're making toys as a way for us to tell the story, it's usually grounded in what we can do with the form factor in some way. What assets do we have? How do we repurpose some of these assets? What are things that are sort of missing in the toy world? And so I'll usually come to Sean with a very random idea of like, hey, let's do Bigfoot, for example. And what do you think that looks like? And then he'll go off into his cave, and sometimes he'll grumble and go, you can't do anything with this. And I don't know. And then he'll go have some iced tea somewhere, and then he'll come back. And then he's got, oh my God, I got this thing. And then it turns into a thing. So it's a lot of that back and forth. Sometimes Sean has an idea for something that's like, oh, I think this could be interesting. How do we weave it in? So I think there's a few different ways we come to things. And that makes it fun, right? That's the fun part of it.
Have there been, and obviously we're not going to get into too much detail about future seasons of Operation Monster Force, but has there been a point where you've had an idea that you really liked, but then you realized, oh, wait, this is a great idea. However, we can build to that if we do this first. Like if this character hits first, 3 seasons from now, we could do this character rather than going ahead and doing this one now.
Oh yeah,
you really hit the nail on its head right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say no more then.
Yeah, well, that's sort of why these things are called seasons, right? Like we are thinking about this as sort of a TV show or those kind of things where we're going to you see elements that will get weaved in that maybe are there, but maybe they're off to the right or the left behind focus, but the subsequent seasons they'll come into focus sometimes. So you'll see things that maybe you're not even paying attention to now that it will really be unveiled in a future season. So there's definitely a lot of that thinking in terms of what seeds can we plant now that will be able to grow into something really awesome down the road.
I just did an interview. Actually, it's gone live as we've been talking here tonight. I just interviewed John Kent from Toyfinity.
Oh, nice.
Unbelievable toy historian. We had a great conversation. But he mentioned part of his process in collaborating with other people was somebody may have an idea for, this great portrait or torso or whatever. And you say, well, look, we've got this parts library. Could these work with that? And then we bring this figure to life. And obviously with Monster Force, you're building a parts library. We can look at season 1 and see, and this is one of the things I absolutely love about modern toys, because I'm not a guy who sits down and takes inventory of like, these 3 figures use these same arms, these 2. What I'm looking at is look at the paint job on this guy that makes it look so much different from this guy that at first glance you don't even realize there are shared parts. Like that stuff is so fun to me, or the overlays that differentiate them, or like with the more modern military style, the Delta Reds, where they've got the vests where you can swap out the different things. Like the first thing I said in the review of the first Delta Red in the Declan Van Helsing review, the thing that I loved and the thing that I said was no 2 Declan Van Helsings are going to look the same. Like everybody shelves. Yeah, it's fantastic. And then that carries over to the Delta Reds where you have that same modular ability and customization. And then because I reviewed them in order. I reviewed 1 through 8. So I was doing the Sleepwalkers last. And when I got to that first Sleepwalker, it blew my mind because talk about no 2 looking the same. I cannot believe what you have accomplished with the parts loadout. And what really blows my mind, though, and obviously we're not going to break down numbers too much, but the prices that you're bringing these in for, I think, are amazing.
Oh, thanks. I attribute that a lot to Big Bad Toy Store too. I mean, again, they've been great partners. They wanted to get something out that we all did. We wanted to get something out that was within reach of a collector. We want people to come into the line, so we wanted to make that the line accessible in that way too. And I've always been a big fan with all the stuff I've made to throw in as much extra stuff as possible into, whether that's extra hands or weapons or heads or other things. And I'm also a big army builder. So if you throw in an extra head, then I'll maybe buy 2 or something like that. So we really want to appeal to the fans in that way. So yeah, we definitely, and then also the customizability is a thing we'll continue to see across the line. The ability to kind of, put this plate carrier on this person or that, or these pockets on here or that there, and it'll also go across a few other lines that were coming out as well, right? So we're basically, like you said, building this huge library that we want to use for a few different lines, and continue to grow it as we can. It's the challenge, I think we'll see, what you see with a lot of smaller companies, is that we kind of have to do this. We have to share parts. Most of us who are doing these things, you'll see that, especially in the first few waves of the things that we're doing, because costs are what they are, and we're trying to build an audience. But the reality is, the more fans we get, the more folks that that support the line, the more different unique things we can do, which is super exciting.
Well, and that's one of the benefits of having a line that is a fantasy military line, is you do want troops, you do want it works for shared parts. Like, that's part of the point of military units. And then not only with troop building of a singular character, but then you've got so many opportunities for repaints. And somebody asked me, do you prefer the Delta Red or the Nocturnal version? And I sat down and I couldn't answer it, because they're both the standard with the blue suit underneath, like the standard Delta Red. What is the standard one? Has a designation. It's Delta Red.
But the urban operations one?
Urban operations, yeah.
And then Nocturnal operations is the camo, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Because they both, like, the standard one is just very toyetic. The colors look great. It's got a great military look. It looks a little different from anything else on your shelf. And then obviously the heads, I mean, the portraits are great. But the camo is executed so well. And that's what, once people get these in hand, like if you watch the reviews online and see how great they look, but once you get one of these in hand, the deco on these is incredible. How are you maintaining the quality on 8 figures across this first season that just are so well executed? Like, what's that process with the factory of sort of going back and forth of, because I got to imagine they didn't get it right on day one.
Yeah, no, they did not. And they do great. They do a great job. So I shouldn't. I mean, that's no knock to them. They are.
But that's. That's just an aspect of
100%.
Making toys.
And they're not in our backyard, right? They're not down the street. We produce things in China, so there's a lot of going back and forth. Everything starts though with sort of the art direction. So Chris Scott at Grindhouse Toys, he does all of our art direction and did a bunch of the paint masters and everything. So it starts there, right? So Chris is really great. I mean, he has a great sense of design.
I don't think I can reach it right now. Oh yeah, I can. Hang on. We gotta give Chris a shout out.
Oh, he's got the Necromancer there. Yeah,
one of the figures of the year.
Yeah,
my gosh.
Yeah, Chris does an amazing job. So a lot of this starts with him. Like, a lot of it, in the same way that with Sean, a lot of the characterization, starts and ends with Sean. When you look at the art direction, it starts and ends with Chris, right? So this is, I mean, he should probably be sitting here with us today too. He's on a cruise at the moment, or I would have had him join us. But like, which I mean, as much as I like to be, I wish I was on a cruise as well. But anyway,
yeah, I'm not gonna lie. If I had the opportunity to be on a cruise, guys.
But yeah, it starts with him. I mean, he's amazing, and he's been a great partner for us in terms of that. And then it's a question of going back and forth with the factory to kind of get it right. And I mean, you're probably looking at, by the time the figure's done, at least 3 to 4 iterations of going back, everything from the camo to the decos on the head sculpts and the washes and all of those things is really, it starts with Chris, but then the factory delivers. I mean, at the end of the day, they've been great, and they're allowing us to do things with paint and those kind of things that you're probably not going to see from a mass retail release of some other lines. No, and that's not to knock anything mass retail. I collect a lot of that stuff things. And I love it, right? So and they have the things they need to do, and we can get away with a little more based on the nature of what we're doing, which is really great.
Well, that's one of the things I try to talk about when I am looking at stuff is everybody. It's all different processes. It's all
Yep.
different end goals. It's all different uh, limitations. It's a lot like looking at the difference between a big budget Hollywood blockbuster and an independent film. When you're looking at an independent film, they are working within certain limitations, but their creative vision is wide open. Whereas with those blockbusters, they may have more of a budget, but they have different constraints that they have to deal with.
Absolutely,
Like
100%.
it's just different things, and you've got to appreciate each segment for what it is and not try to do too much. Like I like to be able to say, yep, you could put this Monster Force figure on the shelf next to a classified figure, but other than that, like you can't really fairly compare the two lines.
No, and like you said, there are different processes, and as a collector, I collect all sorts of stuff for all those reasons, right? And then I augment collections if I can. If there's something that's maybe I would like to see better that company couldn't do for whatever reason, then I'll go to Gridiron's a great example, where I'll go to Gridiron and pick up a bunch of weapons, right, and augment my stuff with that. So, we're able to do certain things because of the nature of the size that we are that others can't at mass, and that's awesome. And I'm happy that we can do it, and I think it's something that the fans, I think, appreciate and like. So I'm glad that we can do those things.
Well, and a lot of it is the difference between, wow, awesome, I'm so happy I have a figure of this character, and wow, awesome, look at this creative vision that I never even would have thought of on my own. Like, that's part of it.
Well, yeah, and we're in such a amazing place right now with indie toys. I mean, it is really all these amazing folks that are making this stuff, which again, I'm a huge fan of, and I collect all sorts of stuff, but we're really in a place where, we weren't going to see these type of things like 20 years ago, right? We were stuck to, big companies, mass retail. And again, I buy those things even now, but now to have the ability to buy all the things that we get as collectors via, small companies or Kickstarters or crowdfunding or all these other things, it really is, it's really a great thing to collect now. And I mean, I look at your shelf in the back, and hopefully my shelf, once I can finish it, will look like that as well. But that's it, right? I think we're really in this really great space right now where there's a lot of amazing stuff coming to us from all different angles.
Well, it's funny to look at the state of the industry now, where you have literal independent toy companies like yourself just putting out fantastic product, and then even NECA and like Super 7 feel a little renegade compared to some of the others. Oh, yeah. But then to look back at like Sideshow putting their Universal Monsters figures into Toys R Us 25 years ago or whenever, or no, I guess, what was it, 97, I think is when those things were hitting? Almost 30 years ago. Yeah. Like, they felt like, oh, what are these guys doing? Sure. Universal Monsters, and these look incredible. Like, the evolution of, I guess, artistic toy vision.
Oh, I mean, look at what McFarlane did in the early 90s. I mean, that was just such a game changer if you were a collector back then. And I think it really made us realize like what could be done with action figures that has led to all the things that I think everybody's doing right now. I think he opened that door for everyone. So I think and then everybody's now running through it. Now we have things like crowdfunding that allows folks to really try to put things out there and hopefully capture an audience, and then make really fun. It really is just an amazing time to be a action figure collector, I think, right now.
Yeah, McFarlane really did light a fire, and as I like to remind people, if it wasn't for McFarlane, we never would have had G.I. Joe Extreme.
Right.
Well, and I remember this was it just goes to show how little I actually know about the toy industry. Everything I know I've learned from Bill. But we were at Comic-Con, I feel like, I don't know, this must have been 20 years ago or something like that. And we're walking around, I'm like, God damn it, where is the original stuff? Like, everyone just keeps remaking like these same 8 properties over and over again. Why is that? Like, I remember when we were kids, there was like a new action figure line, a completely new idea, like every couple months or something like that. And Bill was like, it's just too expensive to do, man. Like, it's too risky. Like, now the stuff, like everyone is owned by Wall Street, and they need to produce a profit every single quarter, and so they just stick with the stuff that they know they can move without taking any risks. And that was before Kickstarter, and like watching Bill go that Kickstarter route to do a group of like an indie toy line, to then that there was, it was Amazing Heroes. It was a lot of public domain, figures, but it was figures that at least had some name value to somebody.
Right.
And to now watch him do a completely original line that is 100%, like untethered from anything that's out there already. I mean, you could make a case for like, well, Dracula is its own brand, but I mean, that's not. but to see that happen now, and to see, like the Savage Crucible guys and like all these people like coming up with brand new original intellectual property as action figure lines, just makes me feel like a 10-year-old again, standing in the toy aisle of Target while my mom is shopping. And that's something I didn't think we would get again. So it really is like fun to be in this time period now.
Well, and I think it speaks to just how widespread collecting is, and to how far toys have come as an art form. Because really,
it's a good way of putting it.
At the end of the day, Operation Monster Force is so exciting because of what you're able to achieve creatively with an action figure now. Like, it's because, oh my gosh, what are they going to do with this concept? Because you could with that idea, you could be doing Keshi figures. There are all kinds of other little things that could be done that would have been easier to execute. But the artistry of delivering that concept as a 1/12 scale, a highly articulated figure, that's fascinating. And I think that's part of what compels people about it is, my gosh, how are they going to do, these crazy armored soldiers? How are they going to do vampire GIs? How are they going to do a Sasquatch with a bazooka? No, what has the bazooka? Is it the Sasquatch?
He's got a big chain gun.
Gun. Okay.
Yeah.
That's you guys have put so much exciting stuff out there. I can't exactly remember. I know you guys collaborated with someone else for the werewolf.
Yeah, Maestro Union. Yeah, so that was really fun too. Where they had done their Veteran William figure, which I really loved, and Big Bad Toy Store had been working with them as well. So they kind of connected us with them, and they said, "Hey," I said, "Hey, would you guys be interested in doing sort of an exclusive figure for us?" Co-branded underneath, Monster Force. We have obviously some werewolves planned in the whole thing. So they were really open to it. Like, oh, we could do that, and we could do not only some different colorways, we could also add some different weapons that hadn't been available yet. So they were really into it, which is really awesome. And that's how we got to the Killer Org figure that's hopefully going to ship later this month. So that's really exciting too. And also I like collaboration. Like, obviously Sean and I talk about working together, but even with other toy companies, it's a lot of fun. And like I said, I collect this stuff and I want to support other companies, and I think it's great. And sometimes we'll look for collaborations and say, hey, you're making this thing, we'll make this thing. Let's do some kind of cool crossover, which hopefully will showcase not only the stuff we're doing, but maybe showcase what they're doing as well, which I think is really neat, right? And I'm a big fan of that also. And I think we're all here to kind of help, lift the, tides and boats and all that fun stuff. And I think that really helps. And I like to shout out other companies making great stuff because I'm buying it as well.
Well, and I do love this sense of community amongst the toy companies now of, let's get everybody excited about all of this, because then there's the understanding that like you said, rising tide lifts all boats. It generates this excitement in the community of, oh, this thing works with this. And these people who make this thing I love think this is cool. Let me go check that out too. And that it's almost like a band doing a cover song. Like,
Right.
oh wow, because that's how I discovered the Misfits, was Metallica doing Misfits covers. And like, oh, Metallica's the great at the time. Metallica's the greatest band in the world. Who are the Misfits? I gotta go check this out. Like again, it's that building equity. It's like
Right.
Big Bad saying, "Hey, we have faith in Fresh Monkey Fiction. We're gonna collaborate with them to offer this special toy line." Wow, Big Bad put their stamp on it. Cool. Oh, I got these. Wow, Fresh Monkey Fiction is great. Oh, Bill from Fresh Monkey Fiction wants me to check out this other thing. Like it's all cumulative. There's no subtraction there.
No, I think it's all additive, right? And also, like, before we even thought about working with Maestro Union, I was like, oh, I'm gonna put that Veteran William on my Monster Force shelf, right? And so it's like, people do this stuff anyway. Like the Horsemen did a really amazing Frankenstein a few months ago as part of their figure obscura line, right? It was really great. It looks fantastic, right? It's going to be on my Monster Force shelf, right? So I think like that's it too, right? Like there's fans are going to put these things together anyway. Sometimes they'll even customize them together, and I think that's also really fun.
Well, and one of the things we talk about a lot on Needless Things and on Audible Interlude is how important toy photography has become to the business.
Sure.
As a means of marketing and promotion, because these toy photographers, tremendously talented, doing amazing things on like Instagram that make these products appealing. But I also think that there's a little part of that is why it's so important to include. Like when you open up a Sleepwalker and you pull that tray out and you're like, wow, this first glance, this figure looks amazing. And then that bag falls out from under the tray and you're like, wait, there's this much more stuff with this figure that I was already happy with. But all that stuff, toy photographers are going to go nuts, changing how they look, taking different, like that, all those little extra treats that are in there. It all just moves everything. It's all just good stuff and exciting to watch the industry just blow up like this.
Oh my God. And who was that? Like, I was just seeing somebody had posted on the Instagram today some amazing photography of like the entire Monster Force tableau in the snow with like a Sleepwalker with a knife like looming over one of the Delta Red guys who's on his back and stuff like that. I was like, oh my God, how much time did that take? Like, this is gorgeous.
Well, and that's another value of the toy photography, even though it's not, well, my toy photography consists of, all right, let me try and put this on a plain background and get a decent shot of it. That's the extent of my skills. But it's also, you are getting other people to apply their visions to what you've created, and stuff that you may not have even come up with or thought of as a selling point or a marketing idea. It's the community. It's almost like crowdfunding, except it's crowd promoting, and it's everybody's input. And going back to what you were saying about collaborating, Bill, in the creative process, my favorite thing is a second pair of eyes, because that second pair of eyes is going to see things you didn't see, think of things you didn't think of. And even if you don't use what they came up with now, it's opened your perspective up a little, or it's added a little something to what you may have been thinking of. Maybe it's something you use down the line. But that, as you said, I think collaboration is so important.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And talking about the Kilowarg, the fact that it has parts to be both clothed soldier and just straight up werewolf. Oh, beautiful.
Oh yeah, they did a really nice job there. I think, the customizability on that figure too. I give them a lot of credit for really, putting that together. And again, it was a really great looking werewolf. I was just like, I don't know if we could do a werewolf this great, and maybe they'd want a partner in something, and they sure enough did. So that was great.
Well, and it's got to be sort of a challenging form factor to work with, because when you are doing the full wolf style werewolf and not the guy with a wolf face werewolf, which I love both. I love any kind of werewolf, and I love seeing all different kinds across different.
It's good to hear you say that. There might be some more coming up.
I love Wolfman I love American Werewolf in London. I think there's room for both styles in the same universe, even. But to take something that challenging that has the full canine form, but also give it that soldier look, it's I need to get those guys on the show too.
Yeah,
I'm working my way through everybody. So Operation Monster Force, very, very exciting right now. Has absolutely delivered some of the most memorable toys of the year. Definitely one of the most memorable premiere launches, I think, of toys at all.
Oh, thank you.
So what else? I would imagine you guys are super focused on that right now, but are there other things? You've got another Naughty or Nice line coming up. What other things have you kind of got brewing?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously future assortments of Monster Force that we're dealing with. We're bringing female characters into the line. We talked about a little bit of that at Joe Fest this summer, so we're working heavy on that stuff. So trying to, again, continue to do more Monster Force type things. We spun out a prequel line called Crimson Moon. Did that. So that's kind of that there. Like I mentioned, we're also, Jason and I are working on Longbox Wave 2, which hopefully will be early next year. We're Naughty or Nice, as I mentioned. We've got Arlen's sculpting some stuff right now. We're going to have a sleigh and some other fun, wacky surprises, I think, next month when we launch pre-orders for the next wave of that. We've got Cops and Crooks. So that was a Hasbro line from
completely forgot that you guys had gotten that.
Yeah.
What? Okay, what are you looking at with that? Like, have you made decisions about scale or anything yet? I know.
Yeah, 6-inch. I'm literally staring at a paint master for Bulletproof right in front of me here.
Oh my gosh!
Here. So it's we're gonna get some photography taken to that and probably launch that figure early next year. We're kind of getting into holiday season, so I think we're going to wait until next year to the first figure. But it's 6-inch, scales with Monster Force, classified, that type of stuff. Very. We're looking at how to take the 80s line and capture that, but in a 6-inch scale. So it's like Bulletproof has soft goods coat, just like he did in the 80s, but much improved than that. And then we're going to try that and do a figure probably every quarter. If it's popular enough, we'll do more, but we're just trying to see where the market sits for the line. But we have multiple figures planned. We're just going to launch with Bulletproof and see what happens there. But I think folks will really dig it. We're pretty happy with what we're seeing out of the prototype.
Well, that's I remember Cops and Crooks coming out when I was a kid. I absolutely loved the figures, but it just drove me nuts that they didn't scale with anything else. I was like, why aren't these G.I. Joe size?
I know. They were from Hasbro too, which just is maddening. It was maddening.
Well, but the other discussion that comes up also is that one of my sort of pet favorite toy lines of all time is Inhumanoids. Absolutely love them.
Yeah.
And my God, yes.
Yes. And my gosh, somebody do something with them, please. But when I was a kid, they seemed like it wasn't occurring to me that they had little tiny heads and it was G.I. Joe sized guys in giant suits of armor. My thought was just, well, these are too big to go with Joe's. What are you doing, Hasbro? Well, Visionaries. Same thing with Visionaries.
Visionaries too, yeah.
What are you doing? But with Cops and Crooks, here is my Cops and Crooks. I love the figures, but couldn't do anything with them. And then Ninja Turtles, I got deep into Ninja Turtles because I kind of never stopped collecting toys. Like, if I had a period of like, this isn't for me anymore, it lasted like a year.
Yeah.
So what I did with my Cops and Crooks, because Batman 1989 was such a massive, seminal, not even movie, just pop culture detonation, I turned Buttons McBoom Boom into Joker. I painted his whole head white, gave him green hair, gave him the smile. And then I turned, I cannot ever remember his name. He's got almost like Michelin Man looking.
Oh, like, right. Yes.
I can't remember his name. Painted him all black, painted a bat symbol on his chest, cut up one of my T-shirts for a cape, and then put masking tape around his head and 2 little cardboard ears, painted that black, turned him into Batman.
Wow.
And
That's gangster.
he scaled. They scaled okay with Ninja Turtles.
Nice.
Early custom work for
I love
costume
it.
crooks.
I love it.
But yeah, that's the dream, though, for them to scale with G.I. Joe. That's what especially with the ties, because I love that Hasbro did the little Easter eggs of comic
story
characters related to Joe characters. And Inhumanoids, Ace, I think at one point was in the Inhumanoids, stuff like that. Like, I love those ties together, because at the end of the day, that's another thing that's so exciting about modern toy collecting, is it seems like companies, this 1/12 scale obviously has been widely adopted by everyone.
Yeah.
And we seem to be at a point where companies are recognizing, no, it's better to have stuff that's compatible than for everybody to have their own signature scale. Because that seemed like the thing in the 80s, where every line that came out, they almost wanted it to not work with other stuff. And I guess maybe the thinking was, well, then they'll focus on our line. But if your line didn't succeed, that plan didn't really work out, did it?
Nope.
Oh my God, those original Eagle Force figures were like, what, 1.5 inches tall?
Yeah,
right.
They were really small and very heavy.
But
they were like die-cast metal.
They were made out of real gold.
And it's funny, because there were little, like with those guys, the portability was the thing. Because even the 3 3/4 inch Joes, if you're going on vacation or whatever, and you're trying to figure out what toys you're going to take with you, you're like, well, I can take literally my entire Eagle Force collection, or I can take like a dozen Joes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Eagle Force was a family vacation line.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
It's a great way of putting it.
Or my brother would be like, if I throw one of these at you, which one is going to hurt you more? And he would land on Eagle Force every time.
Two of the deadliest action figure lines that nobody talks about how dangerous they were: Eagle Force and the LJN WWF stuff. Those giant rubber wrestlers that
they were heavy, man. They were like, right.
Yeah. Absolutely crazy. Well, guys, this has been a great conversation. Before we go, is there any other Fresh Monkey Fiction stuff you want to talk about, or just where we can find you online, what you're up to?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can definitely find us at freshmonkeyfiction.com. Links to all of our social channels. We're more active on Instagram and Facebook. And we sell all of our product through Big Bad Toy Store. So please go check them out and search for us there as well. Again, the big thing that's coming up next for us is working with Arlen, our designer and creator of Naughty or Nice. Next month, we'll be launching what would now be, wave 4 of that line, which is really exciting. And so that's kind of what we got going at the moment.
Excellent. And Sean, one more time, tell us about that vampire podcast.
Yes, absolutely. So The Vampire's Castle is on YouTube. I also have an Instagram account that I'm just sort of starting to build. So it's also The Vampire's Castle on Instagram, but really the good stuff is on YouTube. So please come by, check it out, hit me up, let me know what you like, what you want, what you don't like. If you like werewolves better than vampires, if that's the case.
Brian Lumley is what we want.
I have to say, like that memorial video that I did for Brian Lumley, I have been amazed at the outpouring of fans that have just been like, oh my God, I love this guy's work so much. And I still it's been almost a year since he passed, and I'm still getting comments from people who loved his books. So
I think he did a lot of really unique things that stuck with people.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a horror fan, you've kind of seen it all, but his stuff stands out, I think.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that was an awesome conversation. We will absolutely check back in a few months here and get you back on to talk about what's in the future. But thank you for coming on. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Smash that like button if you like Needless Things.